This week on the Orange Box podcast, we talk about the Xbox massive price increases, Nintendo's confusing digital game cards, more Half-Life 3 hopium, and more. All of this tonight, but first, on to that beautiful bean intro. Welcome to the place where PC and console gaming talk combine. This is the Orange Box Podcast, episode 83. I am your host, the man who has an ExpADDICTION 33, Nathan, also known as the Frozen Gamer 87. And joining me, as always, the man who will soon have his own I Am Zeracon themed Asus ROG ally, Justin, better known as I Am Zeracon. How you doing today? How's your week been?
Not too bad. It was pretty much relatively uneventful for like the latter half of the end of last week. Sunday was Star Wars Day, May the 4th, and I typically haven't done anything for Star Wars Day, but this year I decided, you know what? I'm gonna go back and watch the film. So I didn't watch all the films, but I watched A New Hope, and I just enjoyed it. And then I also did a little bit of Star Wars related gaming, which I'll talk about later on. But after watching that, I thought, now I want to have a marathon, just watch all 6 movies. Just because I enjoyed them, and so I was like, man, I want to watch all the movies, just all 6 of them, because they sadly didn't make any more after that. But that was a good time on Sunday. Yesterday I went and I brought over my friend's PC. I helped him set that up for him. So went through all the initial setup, got him into got like the RGB settings set up for him, got Steam set up for him, and then also try to make sure some other things were set up and were also easy for him to be able to find and navigate, so that way he could just use it as he needed. So it took a while. I think we started around 8 p.m. or something like that, and we ended up doing that until like around 1. So definitely took a while with that, but glad he had that taken care of. And I guess one small little update. So I got an email about the MacBook getting repaired, and so they said, hey, give us a call when you have a chance. So I called them earlier today, and they said, good news, bad news. The good news is that the backup repair, or at least the data transfer, will be easier than they thought, and that would be cheaper. Bad news, it wasn't just the data that was, or it wasn't just the hard drive that was failing. It actually was the board itself on the computer, and they also said, unfortunately, they can't do anything about the board, and there's no way to repair it. So I told they asked if I still wanted to have the data transferred and backed up. I said yes. So I'm gonna try to see what I'll do next. I might see if I can find that specific model on like eBay or something like that, and just try to put that in there and see if that works and that boots up. So I mean, it sucks that it couldn't be fixed, but if I spent less with getting this repair done as far as like the data transfer, and if I can also just find like a cheaper MacBook, then it might all in all end up being cheaper. So Lord willing, if this all works, then it would have been, things would have turned out better than I would have essentially planned. So that's that. But other than that, that's really everything that's happened with me this past week.
All right. Trying to think of what's happened in my week. Honestly, it's one of those times where I'm just like really blanking because it's been kind of a blur. I feel like there hasn't been a whole lot of eventful stuff. And my wife is unfortunately sick, which is never fun. But right now it's just in her throat, so it may or may not end up being anything worse. We'll have to wait and see. But depending on how that goes, I may or may not work from home tomorrow. I'm not planning on it, but I honestly I don't know what's going to happen at this point. So play it by ear in the morning and see what happens. I'm sure there's something I'm forgetting about, because there usually is. And I know that I'm pretty sure that something has happened this week that's been significant enough to be worth mentioning, but I honestly just cannot think for the life of me of what it is. So if I think of it later, I'll bring it up, but otherwise we can just move on. One thing I will note, I'm doing something a little different this week. I decided instead of standing up to record, I'm going to sit. And it's partially because I'm not sure. I mean, like, one of the things that's been making it take a lot longer to get editing done is that when I'm standing up, because I don't spend as much time standing normally, and because I don't talk a lot in general, I'm taking a lot more breaths, and then it's like coming out in the audio, and it's not as simple to edit out as it was when I was doing it through like Premiere. So I'm trying sitting down to see if that makes any difference. You know, makes a difference in my breathing and everything, so that it's just easier to edit across the board, because I do not want to spend nearly as much time working on it, because basically what I was doing is I was taking every like gap between me speaking and cutting that out in order to try to clean up the audio as best as I could, and it was just like very tedious process. Thankfully, the editing process was in general pretty smooth. It just took a long time. One of the things that was like huge that really helped a lot with the editing. So I've had this Logitech mouse for years. I've been using a wired Logitech G502 mouse. I switched to this probably like, I want to say 2017, 2018, somewhere around there. And I just have not wanted to go back. Like, I love this mouse so much. All the buttons, the customization you can do with it. You can map custom things with their software to different buttons. But the thing is, in the past, I've only ever used it to do certain maps for games. And like, I even have sometimes macros, mapped for like for certain attacks in Destiny, for example, because there was one where it's like you have to slide and then you press like two other buttons in order to do, you have to do like a 3-button combo in order to do a certain move with the hunter. And so I just mapped it to a single button press, which was super nice. Made it way easier to complete. Or like in Mirror's Edge, using it for the wall jump, because normally you have to jump and then turn around and jump again. And you have to do them back to back to back in very quick succession, so I just had it press single button. What I've never done, though, is I've never really used it for custom mapping in other programs. And although I've become familiar enough with the different key presses I have to do in multiple programs like Premiere and now in DaVinci Resolve, it's still just tedious enough doing it on a keyboard, having to do that each time I want to change functions, cutting out and then pressing a different button to select, and then selecting the thing and then pressing delete or backspace. So instead, what I set it up to do is I have a single button press for changing to the cutter, a single button press for changing back to the regular selector, and then a single button press for deleting all of those things, for backspacing. So that, and then I also set it so that I have a certain button that lets me zoom in and out, because in Premiere you could do it just by scrolling up and down, but in Resolve it's not set up that way. It's like control and equals for one of them and control and minus for the other one, something to that effect. And so I just have that set now to a single button press, which makes it much easier, because when because I'm having to zoom in and out sometimes in order to get enough of the spot that I want to cut out. And it's just, yeah. Anyway, so the fact that it took me this long to start really utilizing that in a program, it was just it made a huge difference when it came to the editing process. It made it a lot faster. Hopefully this week it won't be quite as tedious, and hopefully I'll be able to figure out, take the time to like learn better how to get rid of white noise more easily, because while there isn't a lot of white noise, the main thing is I just want to get rid of, like, if I happen to be sniffling more or breathing harder, which it mostly just happens because I just don't talk a lot, and so I'm having to take breaths a bit more often because I'm just so used to not talking. And so it's just like, it's very obnoxious. Like, not everybody would necessarily notice it, but I notice it, and it bothers me to the point where I'm like, okay, if I don't edit this out, it's just going to bug me the whole time I'm listening back to it, and I don't want it to be that way for anybody else listening. So anyway, I guess that's probably the only thing other than anything I'm forgetting about. So
do you think that after using it for DaVinci, do you think there's something you could also use the custom macros and setups for with other programs you use?
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm just not really sure what specifically, like, mostly just because I haven't thought about it a whole lot. Partially because one of the things that I didn't realize is that it actually saves those profiles to the mouse, like the internal memory of the mouse. And so, like, I had set up a custom one specifically for Destiny, and I didn't realize that it had done that. It actually lets me save custom profiles for different applications. Then I can just switch to that profile, and then it'll have all that functionality. So I'll definitely make use of it in other programs. I just haven't really had specific ones where I've needed to yet. Most of them I just use like a certain default profile. I like the one that I had set up for Destiny. I will use that same thing in Doom, for example, and at most I might change like a single one. Change one of the things that's a macro to just a regular button, some function in game. But yeah. All right. With all that being said, let me know what you've been playing this week.
All right. So I'm just going to quickly get this one out of the way. I finished everything for Tasty Planet. I got the last few gold medals I needed, but at that point I had eaten, I think, about 70,000 items or so, and at first I thought, well, I could play over the same levels over and over again until I got the rest of the 30,000 I needed, but then I thought, I wonder if there's a simple way, a more efficient way to get this done. And so I saw on a Steam forum thread, someone said the best way is to actually use the in-game cheats, because while the cheats normally disable the ability to get achievements, for eating items though, it doesn't get rid of that. It doesn't lock you out of that. So using one of the cheats allows you to move one of the objects out of the way in one of the levels, and essentially all the items just come right toward you. Mm-hmm. And so then you just keep getting at least about 600 and maybe about like 670 per run. So you just keep doing that repeatedly. Eventually, you'll just get all the items you need. You'll eat enough items that the achievement unlocks, and that's essentially what I did. I just had my Steam Deck out, put it there on the side, let it run until the level was complete, and then just rinse and repeat while I was doing something like watching TV or something like that. So got all the achievements with that, and so I'm officially done with that game, and I'm glad I can move on from that. But as part of Star Wars Day, as I mentioned, I was playing a little Star Wars, and unfortunately, I couldn't get the recording for this because I didn't realize that, at least when I was trying to record it from directly on my Steam Deck, that the clips, you have to compile the clips together in the Steam recordings, on the Steam Deck recordings. So I didn't know that, so I was trying to then record it directly onto my capture card. But every time I was trying to record it, it kept crashing when I got into the missions. So unfortunately, I can't do anything with that. But so I was playing a game called Star Wars Rogue Squadron, or in this case, Star Wars Rogue Squadron 3D. It was originally an N64 game, but then they also shortly ported it over to PC. it's essentially just like your dogfight type of game. You play different missions that take place between Star Wars Episode 4 and 5, and actually I think Rogue Squadron goes a little bit till after 6 from what I've heard. But yeah, so essentially just you go on different missions with different ships, like your X-Wing, your A-Wing. You can use the speeder in a couple missions, and then a couple other ships as well. You also get to use the Naboo Starfighter as well, just as like a small little Easter egg type of thing. It's I think you have to find a mod to get to run in 16:9 aspect ratio, because at the most the game natively does is 768 p. So I can't remember what the aspect ratio is, but it's definitely not like, I think it might be something like 5.4 or something like that. But I mean, it runs at 90 frames per second on the Steam Deck. The problem is, I think that the high frame rate makes it a little bit jittery, because there's a bit of the audio's a bit off from the game that I've noticed. So I'm gonna try to tinker around with some more of that. I mean, I don't plan on playing the game like long term, because I played it originally on the N64, and that's how I played it, and I did enjoy it there. I will say, but I don't know if right now I feel like just messing around with this thing's enough to make it worthwhile to keep playing for right now. I mean, I might come back, but I'll definitely have to see. But then I played some more Core Keeper with some friends. We initially were just trying to gather our bearings again and just try to like do some more exploration, and eventually we decided to tackle some of the bosses. So we went after a King Slime boss fight, which definitely caused us more problems than it should have, but we got through that. And also I did realize that I don't think I mentioned this before, but I started trying to dabble with some of the summoner skills and the magic class, and I feel like I'm really preferring this over melee, just because with the gear that I have, I can summon 4 different creatures to aid me, and they really help out with, mobs of enemies, which has been very useful, especially when I get ambushed by a bunch of them. And also it has helped with the boss fights as well, because they can deal damage while I'm trying to like get far away to at least use some of my magic abilities, especially since, because of the armor that I have, it makes me weak, but it doesn't have a lot of defense, but I'm able to just use more summons and more abilities with that type of thing. So it helps in that aspect. And the one fight we did have against, which was called a Hive Queen, that one, unfortunately, took several attempts because of the fact that we just kept getting swarmed. But I definitely think that the build I have now is pretty good, so I think I'm going to stick with this build, and I might not really use melee or use any type of abilities and weapons from here on out. But we'll definitely see. So, like I said, we cleared 3 bosses so far, and we also found some music gates, which essentially you use your instrument, and if you play the notes that are written on the wall, then the gate opens. The thing that irritated me slightly, though, is the fact that it's not. You look at it and you think, oh, this is like it's written music, so just play it here. This is a B, so I press a B. It doesn't work that way. You have to actually fiddle with the instrument until you find the right notes, and then use what's written on there in relation to the note you should be pressing. So while it looks like you're supposed to be hitting a B, it's not actually like a treble clef. Like if you look at the notation on the wall, it looks like you're supposed to be hitting a B, but it's not a B at all, and it's really just like, it's whatever the game thinks it is.
Right.
And then once you hit that, then you move in relationship. So if, like, say it's actually an E, then you would have to use that and judge to figure out like how much higher or lower you need to move to get to the right note. So I didn't like that aspect of it, but I thought it was kind of fun just to like do something somewhat music related.
Yeah.
in that regards. But then I played some Mandragora Whispers of the Witch Vale, and I played this game as just to test it out, just to try to see how things would go, because I did play the demo originally, like I mentioned last week, and I thought, I'll give it a shot. I ended up playing this game much more than I thought I was going to play it, and I will say it's to the credit of the game, because while I thought it was decent enough when I played the demo, I think being able to actually choose a build rather than just having one pre-selected build made a huge difference, because as I was able to play the type of way I would like to play.
Right.
And for anyone who's played Salt and Sanctuary, I definitely think this is a game you'll enjoy, because it's that 2D type of Souls-like game. It doesn't have, of course, the same art style, whereas like Salt and Sanctuary had that sort of fairy tale book art style, with like hand-drawn models and stuff. So it doesn't look the same way, but the way it plays is very similar. And also, of course, because it's in the same vein, it's also like a Metroidvania as well. So you do have aspects where you do explore and you have to come back later once you get certain abilities or different skills in order to actually make progress in certain areas. And I spent most of the time doing side stuff and I completely even forgot about like what I was doing with the main story, because of the fact that when you meet certain characters, they'll have stuff to do. When you go to certain towns, you have stuff to do, and when you find new stuff, you can report that stuff to certain characters, and then you have more stuff to do. So that definitely got me caught up. And initially, I was going to say, this is actually one of the easier Souls-likes that I've played, until I hit a brick wall. And I mean, I'm not going to say that I haven't died before in the game, but after you reach, I don't know if it's like the second or third main story boss fight, that's when the game just gets really difficult. Because you go into a new area. Well, first you go into sort of like a new dimension, and it slowly kills you while you're in there.
Metroid Prime 2.
Then you yes, that is exactly what it's like. And you have to like keep jumping back and forth in between the portals in there.
Yeah, Metroid Prime 2.
And then the next area. Yep, just like Metroid Prime 2. And then once I actually got out of the area, the enemies are just way stronger, and they also deal more status effects to you. And there's like one house I went to where there's just like a flooded area, and there's something in the water that hunts you down and drags you down and instantly kills you. And that was enough to just make me say, I don't think I want to come back to this area. So I went back to another area, and this is sort of like where it is in the footage right now, where there's this boss fight. While you only see me face the boss one time, I don't know how many times I actually faced this boss, because he has an ability that more or less can one-shot you. And I had no idea how to actually get around it, because while I thought I understood how if he swings his hammer down, the attack will come from in front of him. Several times it came from behind him, which really threw me off there. But eventually I was able to actually beat him. And after that, I was like, you know what? I think I'm good now. I think I want to hop back into something that won't frustrate me as much right now. And that actually was a game that I started last week, which is Clear Obscure Expedition 33. Now, unfortunately, I didn't make as much progress as I would have liked to. I went through and got to the first boss fight, which took me a couple attempts because, well, the first time I was not expecting a boss fight. I thought, okay, maybe I just look around here a little bit, and then there should be a boss fight. Because I didn't even save that. Well, I saved, but I didn't rest. So essentially, I went into the boss fight already with some damage,
Gotcha.
and so it was easier to me to get wiped out. Second time I tried the boss fight, was able to succeed. I made progress from there, and then I of course went into like I think it's called the Flying Waters area, and then I went into the the house where I met up with Mael,
Mhm.
and if that's the person you were talking about saying that they're, yeah, I thought so, because I played around with her a little bit after finding her, and I thought, huh, that's what he meant. So it's definitely interesting there in that aspect. So I haven't made it too much further than that. I will say that the overworld though is, I wasn't expecting the way it's designed.
Mhm.
I mean, of course, it is kind of reminiscent of, say, something like the older Final Fantasy games
Yep.
where, you go into an area and then when you go into overworld, it's different. So I think it's kind of, it's definitely interesting, but I think it's kind of harder to navigate in a sense, just in relation to sort of like enemies, trying to like figure out, okay, am I close enough? Am I far enough where I
Right.
can like attack them first
Mhm.
or not? So it's a bit harder in that aspect, but I think that the design is at least interesting. Um, so yeah, and I will say that I am still just surprised at how there are still new mechanics being introduced.
Mhm.
After I thought that, okay, I've learned everything that I need to know. So it's very interesting, and I still just enjoy that aspect because it's really just giving the combat more depth in everything. But yeah, that's everything that I have.
Right. Well, I'll definitely have plenty to say about Expedition 33 when I get to that part, but um I will already tell you that even in Act 2 I've still gotten new mechanics. So,
Whoa.
I mean it's not like you're not getting stuff like all the time, but you'll get some for a while and you'll go a while without anything new, and then you'll get something new every once in a while. And I think that I know that there's still at least some things that I haven't gotten yet that come later on. But I'll get into my talk about that game in a little bit. First of all, I'm going to talk about some of the other stuff I played, because while there wasn't a ton of different games, there were a few things. So, first of all, I did play a little bit of Dark Souls 2. I basically just decided to go ahead and try fighting the Ancient Dragon. And I didn't beat him. So there, the biggest thing is more than anything, because I mean it's a very big arena. But his fire breathing attacks, if you're not positioned correctly, it's really easy for him to hit you. Like if he's breathing out in front of him, it's usually pretty easy to avoid, as long as you are able to run up to, where his head is or further back. But anytime he jumps up in the air, if you're not far enough away from where he's breathing the fire, it spreads all over the place. And so um I spent some time trying to fight him for a while, and I basically I ended up, going in with the summon, and um I think I got him down about 2/3 to 3/4 of the way of his health. I ended up just going with the great sword and no armor, because of the fact that I was finding um avoiding that fire really just required me being able to run as quickly as possible to avoid it. And I was doing, I mean, like I said, I was doing pretty well. Got him down about 2/3 of his health. My NPC that was summoned ended up dying, and then it was just me, and I was still doing fine until I made the mistake of staying too close to his tail, and then he killed me with his tail. So then each time I went back in, it came to a point where I ran out of human effigies and couldn't become human anymore, which means I couldn't summon anybody. And then I just keep getting hit by fire that he was breathing, and I decided I'm not going to mess around with it anymore for now. When I go back to it, I will probably just go find some other areas that I haven't been to, because I know that there's still lots of the game that I haven't touched yet. So I'll probably do some of the other stuff before I go back and fight him. I guess I should mention, I don't have any footage, but I had tried to fight King Vendrick a little bit, and it was fighting him and just how little damage I was doing was the main reason why I decided to try and fight the ancient dragon. Because if you defeat the ancient dragon, then you get the last giant boss soul, and that last giant soul makes it so that King Vendrick takes the normal amount of damage and deals the normal amount of damage instead of dealing double damage and taking half damage. So yeah, when I go back to that, I'm probably just gonna go check out some other areas and then come back to the ancient dragon later. The only other idea I had as a potential thing is reallocating my stats and maybe like taking out stats that I have towards attunement, because I had attunement just so that I could use some pyromancy, and then instead focus more on equip load and then equip a full hovel armor set and go in there, because I tried going in one time with the hovel armor set and I just barely could move. I couldn't even get to the boss, couldn't even get over to him in the arena because I was just moving so slowly, and so it did not work at all. But yeah. So that's it for Dark Souls. No Bloodborne this week. I'm just kind of putting a pause on Bloodborne until after I finish Dark Souls 2 is kind of my intention. But I did get to play some Ghost of Tsushima Legends with one of the guys from the Married to the Games community. He was playing on PS5 and I was playing on PC, obviously. This is my first time actually playing the game at 1440p, which I just hadn't done yet. And unfortunately, my frame rate was definitely suffering more. Probably at least in part because of the fact that, for one, I was playing at 1440p. So, basically a 175% of the, original resolution I played at 1080p. But then also because of the fact that I was recording at the same time. So it's like those things combined, definitely the frame rate suffered a little bit. But it was still pretty fun. We basically just did a lot of the early low-level missions. Because you can do the missions on bronze, silver, or gold difficulty. But you have to have gear up to a certain level in order to be able to do anything higher than bronze. And he hadn't really done any missions yet. So we just did stuff on bronze, and we went through the majority of the missions. We didn't finish all of them. We didn't quite have enough time, but we did that for a while, and overall that was pretty fun. Pretty good experience. I definitely will have to... I might consider checking out, seeing for that mode in particular, if DLSS would actually help. Just because I would like to have like a higher frame rate. I definitely won't use frame generation, but I might at least try seeing if it makes any difference having just DLSS on to help with that rather than doing it completely native 1440p. So, but anyway, then did a little bit of Minecraft Dungeons with the kids. Unfortunately, we could not finish the level we were on. We just kept dying, and then it just wasn't going well. So, I don't know. I mean, we'll probably keep at least trying it. I have a feeling that maybe... Well, I think the biggest problem we have is that the kids are very used to Nintendo controllers. Because they play on the Switch a lot. And so the button placement is throwing them off. Like, my oldest doesn't seem to have too much of a problem with it because of the fact that he's... He plays enough games to where, like, he's been able to figure out the different button placements on some things. He'll still mess up occasionally, but it's usually not too bad. But the other two have a much harder time, especially when they have to use a PlayStation controller, which has completely different names for the buttons. And so it's just like, you need to press this button. And so, like, my daughter's looking at the controller trying to figure out where the button is. And so that causes some problems. And I really don't understand why in this game they have the potions having to recharge each time before you can use them, instead of just giving you a certain number of potions. that makes no sense to me whatsoever. I mean, like Diablo, even like the oldest Diablo, you could carry more than one potion at a time. And while, yes, you don't have to carry potions per se, if you're running low on health, it's not exactly helpful to have it to where you have to wait like 3 minutes for it to recharge after you use it. And, it's like, okay, we need to heal, and we can't heal because we have to wait for the potion to recharge. And so then one of my kids is like low on health, and then one or two of us get killed. We can't be revived because everybody's dead. And so then my daughter's left being the one who needs to revive us, but she's trying to wait for her potion to recharge. And so then she doesn't come and revive us, and it just ends up being difficult. So yeah. Hopefully it will be something we can kind of figure out a rhythm. I'm hoping maybe just the levels we tried going into were just that maybe we were just too low level for it, and maybe that's the reason why we're having so much trouble. But I don't know. I'll have to do some more research and see what I can find on that front. But as I mentioned in my intro, after you and I talked about Expedition 33 last week, I decided, you know what, I'm gonna look it up and see if this game is still on sale. Because I mean, the game had already released. I figured the game might not be on sale anymore. If it's not on sale, I'm not gonna grab it. But I checked Green Man Gaming. At first, it's like, oh, there is no sale. Okay. But there's a 15% off discount for spring. And then I realized, oh, I'm not logged in. So I logged in and 20% off, and it's like, yeah, I'm gonna get it. So I ended up grabbing it, and this game, I mean, holy crap, this game. Okay, so first thing I want to mention, I tested it out on all 3 different areas where I could play it. So I tested it out on my laptop, the Steam Deck, and my desktop. Steam Deck is where I started first because I figured, okay, this is a good way for me to test it out. It's something that I can easily pick up and put down as needed. And I was just, trying to do the prologue, part of the prologue, and wasn't really happy with it. It didn't look good. The frame rate wasn't good. I was not happy with it. And so I ended up just putting it down and then booting it up on my laptop instead. And it took some fiddling with settings to get something that ultimately made me happy. The footage like I have here is before I finalized where I've been playing for a while now, but it's still... This is when I was focused more on having much more high visual settings and then just 60 plus for the frame rate. Eventually I ended up deciding to make use of DLSS more, and eventually ended up settling on using high performance on DLSS, which I never thought I would do because I've always thought games look terrible when you do it to high performance. And it definitely looks better without that. But with high performance, I'm getting 100 to 120 frames per second. Very consistently, and that's with the 120 cap on it. And so... But this game, I mean, it looks incredible. I guess I should also mention, on my desktop, I'm getting something similar. I ended up ultimately settling... initially, it was basically the same thing in terms of frame rate and visuals and everything. Then I ended up settling on going with performance rather than high performance because it's just enough of a visual difference to where I thought, okay, I think I like the performance setting a bit more. I'm still getting around 80 to 100 is pretty average what I'm getting on my desktop. So it's kind of funny I'm getting, a higher frame rate on my laptop, but my laptop also has a newer version of DLSS because of the fact that it's on a 40 series card, whereas my desktop is on a 20 series card. So DLSS has gotten better with each generation in terms of what it's able to do. And for the most part, it's really impressive how much it can do. Honestly, the only time that I really have found myself less impressed with it was probably sometimes when it comes to hair follicles, it looks really bad. Like when there's hair across people's faces and stuff, it has like really weird artifacting and stuff. But otherwise, I'm really impressed with what the technology can do, and of course I'm getting a much better frame rate as a result, so that all's very nice. But in terms of the actual game, so first of all, I do want to mention I'm playing on expert difficulty. I just decided that, I almost never choose the highest difficulty on games. But between playing the Sucker Punch games on hard and then, of course, getting really into the Souls games, I just I'm just going to try it. Let's see how it goes. Especially because I knew that there was dodge and parry mechanics in this game. And it has been hard at times, especially like when it comes to facing the optional chromatic bosses. Which are really just like basically really super strong versions of regular enemies. But I have been finding that the expert difficulty, it's been really satisfying when I've been able to get through a boss, or, especially these chromatic enemies, because so far these are really the hardest enemies in the whole game. And I've just been doing each one as I come across it. So anyway, going back to the actual game itself. I feel like this is probably a game that I would actually rank a 10 out of 10. It's possible that could change, but I have been playing this game so much in the past week. It's been ridiculous. I'm not going to say how many hours I have, but I am about halfway through Act 2. Give or take. I'm not sure if that's exactly where I am in terms of it, but I think I'm about halfway through Act 2. Right now, I'm spending more time just kind of going around and doing lots of exploration and stuff. But it's just been like... It's hard to explain. So the story is really interesting. The characters are really interesting and likable. There's no politics in this game whatsoever. Like, it's all focused on who the characters are, on their stories, and everything else. And the music is phenomenal in this game. Like, I ended up buying the soundtrack almost immediately, especially once I found out that the soundtrack had wave format. Has MP3 and wave format on Steam when you buy the soundtrack, and $20 for the soundtrack with 154 tracks, I think. And it's just like some of the songs, especially like the battle themes, are just like, wow, these are so good. And I don't know if you've gotten to the boss in the in that underwater area. I for some reason I can't think of. You said the name of the area earlier, and I'm spacing on.
Flying Waters?
Yes, Flying Waters. The boss is Gobel is the name of the boss. And that's not a spoiler or anything. It's just, but the music for that boss has been stuck in my head the past couple days, especially because I've been listening to the soundtrack off and on. I mean, there's so many amazing battle themes. Like even with when I was fighting like these chromatic enemies over and over and over and over, because the music is so good, it definitely made the experience much better than it would have been otherwise. But it's just, there's so much to say about this game. So parry dodge mechanics, I want to talk about those a bit. So early on especially, I focused a lot more on dodging. And it was largely just because I was having a hard time figuring out the parry time window. Now I focus almost exclusively on parrying. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that there are certain enemies where, while dodging is a perfectly acceptable way to deal with them, if you can parry their attacks, then you get off a counter attack. That is as long as, I mean, like if they do a multi-step attack, like it's, multi-hit attack that's like 3-4 hits. If you parry all of those, then you get off a counter attack that's usually super strong. If you parry a couple of them, you don't get the counter attack unless it's like if they hit one character with one hit and then they hit another character and that character parries all of the hits against them, then they'll still be able to get it. But like if they're doing one that's against the whole team, for example, if you don't parry all the hits, you won't get the counter attack. But if you do parry all the hits, then you get a three person or however many people you have in your party at the time counter attack, and it's just like so satisfying when you pull that off. And yeah, it's just like one of the things that I found especially is that if you can really pull off these parry attacks, honestly, it's one of the most satisfying things I've ever experienced in this type of game. And I know that they're not the first game to do like parrying and dodging and that sort of thing in a turn-based game. I mean, like you have the Paper Mario games, for example, that do a parrying or a blocking and not dodging. They have blocking and then they have like timed button presses for attacks and that sort of thing to do more damage or extend the attack, that sort of thing. But this one it's just been really, really satisfying, and it really does make a big difference, especially in the really hard boss fights. Let's see here. I'm just trying to make sure I cover all the stuff. Obviously, I'm not going to go into any spoilers story-wise and everything. There's a lot of different things I could say about this game. But I can say right now, unless something dramatic comes out that completely changes my mind, this is easily going to be my game of the year, without question. And as much as I love games like Ghost of Tsushima and God of War 2018 and God of War Ragnarok, it's like I love those games, but they are not 10 out of 10s, as great as they are. This game is, in my opinion, a 10 out of 10. And like honestly, if I had to complain about something, the one thing I would definitely complain about is the fact that the cutscenes are stuck at 30 frames per second, where the rest of the game I'm playing at a much higher frame rate, because it's really jarring going from 100 frames per second or even 60 frames per second down to 30 every time there's a cutscene. And that part is very annoying, but that's like a small thing when it comes down to the rest of the game. Like, it's hard for me to dock the game for that in terms of its overall score, because the gameplay itself is amazing. I mean, like, the exploration is great. The combat is phenomenal. Like, it takes the best of Persona 5 Royal and then adds dodging and parrying mechanics on top of that, timed button presses. But it's not like quick time events. It's just basically like, if you happen to hit the button at this specific time, then you can get a better attack off. Occasionally apply different effects and that sort of thing, which, that's great. It worked great. I will also say, so far, definitely my favorite character in terms of just how powerful they are is Mael. She's just ridiculous. She is so strong and so good, and she's easily my favorite character to use. Like, I have to have her in my party pretty much at all times. And one thing that's hard, though, is that when you actually get to a point that you have, and this isn't a spoiler or anything, but when you have a revive ability with Lune, it's hard to have her out of the party, or I should say, it's hard to have her out of the party whenever you're going into a boss fight, because it's one way that you can have a revive without having to use a revive tint, because even though the more you play, the stronger those get, and the more of them you're able to use, it's still much better to just be able to do it with an ability, especially because of the fact that you regenerate AP and everything as you go. So, and there's lots of other like different ability stuff that comes along that ends up being super helpful. Like one that allows you to attack twice in the same turn, and to where like your basic attack automatically does 2 hits every time, and that sort of thing. Gosh, there's just so much to say about this game. The gameplay that's been playing, this is all just this is the first 3 of the chromatic bosses that you can face, and my winning attempts against each of them, because I cut out all the I left out all the ones where I failed, and just the amount of effort it took to get these bosses beaten, especially when it came to learning the dodge timing, and I don't think I really parried any of these bosses because of the fact that I just wasn't comfortable with it at this point. But so far, let's see here, I have, I think, like 10 or 11 of the chromatic bosses beaten as of this point. It's funny, there's one of them, I was looking up a thing when I was getting close to the end of Act 1, where someone was saying, where it's like, okay, these are all the things you can miss if you don't do them during Act 1. And they pointed out one of the chromatic enemies, which is actually 3 chromatic bosses in one fight. And so I had been, up to this point, every time I fought a chromatic boss, I recorded the footage because I wanted to eventually have a compilation. This one that was 3 of them, I literally, I tried this fight several times before I finally beat it, and even though I saw the name of the enemy and the fact that it was a chromatic enemy, I saw that every time I did the fight, it was not even registering in my brain this was a chromatic enemy, so I didn't record the footage. But by that point, I was definitely making parrying as much as possible my thing. The one type of enemy I will say I have never been able to successfully parry, or almost never, is the mimes. Especially that invisible hammer attack that when it does a strange attack. I cannot parry those for the life of me. I just have not been able to figure out the timing on it. And I faced, I think, all the ones I can up to this point. I know that I have one in a higher level area that's nearby that I haven't gone to yet, and there's definitely several more that I haven't faced yet. But yeah, I did make sure after you talked about having that secret enemy in the prologue, the mime, I made sure to intentionally seek it out and fight it, especially because if you don't fight it, then you miss it. And the only time you can get it is New Game Plus, and I would imagine probably the achievement is that you have to have all of them in a single playthrough, and then it can't be like, oh, I got all of the rest of them, but I missed the one in the prologue, so when I start the prologue, I just got to do the one mime, and then I'm good to go. I think you probably have to do all of them in a single playthrough. I am planning to go for all the achievements in this game, I will say. I haven't looked at the majority of them, but I think the majority of them are... I don't think there's a whole lot that's missable, other than stuff that is like from the prologue, for example, where you, if you miss it in the prologue, you miss out. You don't have another chance to get it unless you do New Game Plus. I'm trying to think what else. One thing I will recommend to you, and I'm just going to say this now because I think it will save you a lot of trouble later on. When you get to the Gestural Village, make sure that when you're doing the arena, that you use Mael for the last fight. Just make sure you do that. This isn't really... I'm not going to say anything about what the last fight is, but I will say that whoever you beat the last fight with, that is the person that you get a special weapon for. And I think most of the special weapons you can get are obtainable outside of that arena. And hers, the only way that you can get it, if you don't get it in that arena after doing that arena fight, is there's a certain boss that you have to face that is very high level and that you can't face. Basically, you can't face until the end of the game, unless you're just an absolute expert when it comes to parrying, and even then, your attacks will do almost no damage to this boss, so it's not even worth it. I mean, well, late game, you'll be fine. But, like, I tried fighting them because, you know, I had been just fighting every boss I came across up to that point. And I think, probably around, like, level 16 or something. And recommended level for this boss is 70. So, I was just a touch under-leveled. And initially, like, and it's like, she attacks immediately when you start the fight. And I couldn't even dodge her first attack. Eventually, I figured out the timing well enough to dodge her attacks, but it's just like I'm doing like just a sliver of damage, even when I'm doing 9999 damage to her. So it's probably better that I just wait until late in the game when I have not only characters that are much stronger, but also have the ability to break the damage limit. Because I know that comes, it's after Act 2. I don't know if it's actually in Act 3 or if it's just like from Act 2 going into 3. That's all I know about it. I know nothing beyond that, and I don't really consider that a spoiler per se, because I don't know what it actually is. I just know that it's something that breaks the damage limit. So, let's see here. Okay. I think 2 more things I want to talk about with this game. I'm sure there will be there's probably some other stuff I'm forgetting about, but like this game's just amazing. So, this was just kind of funny. I think it was yesterday, or maybe no, it was probably Monday. There was one point where my wife wanted to take the dogs for a walk, because I always take them in the morning, and sometimes she'll take them in the evening. So she went to take them for a walk, and the kids were playing out in the front yard, and I don't really feel super comfortable with them playing out there completely by themselves. So I just went and sat out there with them. I decided to take the laptop with me, and I could keep it at high performance and maintain my frame rate, but it had like 45 minutes of battery life. And then it was dying, so I definitely, once I got to the point where, like, okay, I got to a good stopping point. I saw that the battery was down to 9% from a full charge when I went out there, and yeah, I stopped trying to play that way. That was part of what motivated me to end up reinstalling it on the Steam Deck, because initially when I had installed it on the Steam Deck, like, I had installed it, wasn't happy with how it was performing in the prologue, so I uninstalled it and hadn't really come back to it. But then I decided yesterday I would just go ahead and give it another try on the Steam Deck, see if I could do okay. And it wasn't as bad as I thought it was before. Being able to test it in the overworld and all of that, and actually going into some real fights, but it still is less than ideal. And like the footage that's shown here is with one of the characters you get later in the game, which is not really, like, I mean, it's spoiler-ish, but without any context, it I wouldn't really consider it all that much of a spoiler. It's a new character. I was able to still manage to parry some attacks despite the fact that the parry timing is much different when you have the lower frame rate than it is when you have the high frame rate. So that was throwing me off a bit, but I did all right. And so it's yeah, there's that. But I still managed to get through the fight, and I beat the boss that I was facing. So I did try going to a fight that's not recorded here because it would have been very spoilery. That's in Act 2, and it that boss was I did okay fighting him on the Steam Deck, but I ended up after I lost the fight, I turned off the Steam Deck, got my save loaded up to the cloud, and then played it on my desktop, and then I was able to get through the fight. So, oh yes, one last thing that I want to mention about. So there is a secret gestural arena, and this isn't a spoiler. It's just a secret area. It's pretty easy to find. You'll probably come across it on your own after you've gone through the gestural village. And there are these different super strong gestrals you can fight. There's like a series of 4 of them, and each one is harder than the last, and you have to do these fights solo. And so this last one, it's like anytime he hits, it's a one-hit kill, at least at this point in the game. And I think my character is like level 13 to 16, somewhere around there. So this, I think, was one of the things that motivated me heavily to really start working on parrying. And so there's what's being shown here is fighting with Mael, and when I actually started to figure out the parry timing, it's just like, oh man, that's so satisfying. The hardest part was like some of the attacks that these guys do, they'll have fake outs. So they'll feign one punch and feign another, and then they'll actually hit you. And then other times they'll have a series of 3 punches, and so it's just really easy to accidentally it can be really easy to miss the timing on that. And eventually I was able to figure this one out, and it was just yes, when I actually I managed to I parried every single one of his attacks, and then was able to counter each time, and it was just like, yes, that's so satisfying when that happens. But yeah, or then like in the attempt that just played, I was parrying the majority of his attacks, and even when I was getting hit, like I had a picto that made it so that I would gain like a shell when my health got really low. And so it's just like I had just enough damage protection to where I could manage, but then I went back in and was able to parry every single attack, or at least I think it was every single attack, and just get the 999 counterattack every time that happened. Yeah, and I will say with Mael, the more you can use her virtuos stance, the better, because 200% damage every single time is just super nice. And there are ways to maintain it, mostly with abilities you get, but also there a weapon that you get that starts her in virtual stance. So, but I think that's everything I have to say. I mean, obviously there's a whole lot that could be said about this game, and I'm sure that especially as you progress in the story, we will together be nerding out about this game. So yeah, anyway, I'm done. That's what I have.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with everything you said about this game, about how good it is, and how so far it's just, game of the year, essentially. It's just that good of a game. And as you said, there are games that have done similar stuff with like the mechanics. Like, I mean, you mentioned more the Super Mario RPG games. Like the first game that popped in my head was like Legend of Dragoon, but Mario Party. I mean, not Mario Party, but Super Mario RPG that came out earlier.
Right.
But so like other games have done this before, but still, this one still feels different in how it's handled things, and it feels distinct in a sense, that really just sets itself apart in many ways. Now, question I have, because you were talking about missable stuff after the finishing the act. Is there anything missable, say, like, if you go into an area, can you, and say, like, you leave that area, is there anything, like, missable in that area that you can't get back? Okay.
No, I
So it's just, like,
I
for
think the
that.
only stuff that's like completely missable is the stuff at the prologue. I think after that, everything else you can still go back to. You can go back to the areas and get anything you missed.
Okay. Okay, that's cool. Oh, and so what do you think is the best way, or how did you find the best way to time parrying? Because, like, for me personally, I would say I have about a 43% rate with parrying, which is why I mean, I've tried to parry more, but it's just like something I'm still trying to get the timing right. So what is there, like, any sort of, like, key moment that you found to actually execute it properly?
The thing that helps me the most, with most enemies, it is the audio cue that it gives when you parry. Because it's like there's usually a distinct sound that tells you that this is the right time to parry, and it's usually like just as they're hitting you. That being said, I still fail on it a ton. I've gotten a lot better at it to where I can parry a lot more often than I used to be able to, and some enemies, because they repeat just enough, or the attacks are similar enough from one enemy to another to where, like, it's possible to learn, okay, this specific moment is when you hit parry, and then you get off that parry and it's like magic. But yeah, the audio seems to be the easiest thing for me. I will say one of the things, this is one of the chromatic enemies that I beat. That was the second one, the chromatic troubadour. That one I wasn't parrying yet. I was just basically focused on dodging. But I'm going to say right now, if you face this guy, the number one thing that helps with one of his attacks. So there's one attack he does where he starts off by blowing his trumpet, and there will be two green orbs that shoot up in the air, and then he'll run and swing his trumpet thingy at you, and then right after that, the green orbs will drop and hit you. It took me forever to figure out that it was the green orbs that I was avoiding, and so, like, I was trying to figure out what is the timing for dodging these things. I mean, for dodging these other two attacks, it's like it just seems random. I can't tell where it's coming from. And then I watched the video, and I was like, oh, it's those green orbs that you're avoiding. So you can just watch them, and then when they get down, that's when you dodge. And it's like, oh, okay, that makes it so much easier. So it's kind of one of those things where you have to, I think more than anything else, it's figuring out what works best from enemy to enemy. There are some enemies where it is basically just visual for me more than anything else, and then I have kind of, sometimes I am able to pick up the audio as a result. Like I start noticing the audio more when I've already figured out the visual, but I think audio is definitely the best way to start to learn the parrying process more. Just kind of listen for a distinct sound, and you might be able, I mean, there are YouTube videos where they'll talk about that, and, like, they'll point out that sound. You could even, like, if it helps you a little bit, go into a battle with the music turned all the way down so that you can just listen for that audio cue, and that way you can get a better idea of how to parry. I mean, I definitely would never ever tell people to turn off the music in general, but if it's just for learning this, I think that it could be helpful. But yeah, I'm honestly kind of all over the place with the parrying. Like, I will parry, like, I will at least attempt to parry 99% of the time now. There are certain attacks where I'm just like, okay, parrying is not working for me, so I'm just gonna try dodging, like with the mimes. But I want to learn how to parry those mimes because I hate them. And I hate the fact that I haven't been able to parry them when I can, parry enemies that otherwise are significantly more difficult. But yeah.
And I guess sort of going off of that, have you managed to do a boss fight without taking damage yet?
No.
Because I know that's one of the achievements.
Oh,
is
is
do
it
that.
really? Ugh.
Yeah. There's an achievement to like complete a boss fight without taking damage.
I wonder if that counts for any of the for like any of the arena enemies that you face, because those have boss health bars. So I wonder if that would work, because if that's possible, then I could probably pull it off, just fighting Julian Tinyhead over and over, because I've learned his timing well enough to where I could probably pull it off with enough attempts. But I'll have to look into that.
Okay. Well, then I'll also make a note of that then, because I was thinking like it had to be a main boss, but if you can actually do with other bosses, that could.
I hope so, because
I
definitely do not want to have to. Otherwise, I'm just like, I don't know if I can do that. I mean, I guess maybe. Well, even if you turn down the difficulty to easy, not taking any damage, I mean that depends entirely on you being able to dodge or parry all the attacks. That's the only way that you can manage that. And yeah, so I'll have to look into that.
Yeah, I just thought I'd mention that, since you definitely have had a better time at parrying than I have. I didn't know if like there was a boss that did well, that you were like came close to doing it with, if you hadn't done it already.
Yeah, I would say I'm pretty much from the last time I watched. I mean, from when I watched the fight, I get the last time when I beat Julian Tinyhead, which is one of the guys in the Gestrel secret arena. I'm pretty much positive that I got hit once or twice. But I will probably just have to try going into there and see if I can beat him without getting hit, even if it takes multiple attempts. Because yeah, I definitely would like to be able to do that. I don't want to have to try to do it against one of the really hard bosses, because there's some of them where it's just like, there's no chance I'm getting out of this fight without getting hit. But there's others where I could see it potentially happening.
Okay. And then I just have one question going back to Dark Souls 2. So some of the attacks you mentioned with the ancient dragon, it just got me thinking about it. So when you say that maybe I think it's the King of the Storm in Dark Souls 3 was kind of inspired by that fight, then? Just because the way you mentioned like how he does have like an attack that shoots down and it spreads out, and then also of course the attack of course in front of you. It reminded me, the way you described that fight reminded me of that fight. So I was wondering, like, do you think were there any similarities there that you think FromSoft sort of like?
Not really, because I mean the other thing about King of the Storm that's hard to say is that King of the Storm is of course not just by himself, and so because of that it makes the fight completely different. But I also feel like King of the Storm, it was easier to avoid. I mean, it was obviously a much more narrow arena as well, and King of the Storm wasn't quite as big as the Ancient Dragon, if memory serves. But yeah, I would say, I mean, I think King of the Storm was actually a much more unique dragon fight than some of the other ones. I mean, not just because of the fact that it had what's-his-face on there, on top of the king. What is his name? For some reason, I can't remember it.
It's the Nameless King.
That's right.
He doesn't even have a name.
Yes, the Nameless King. Thank you. Yes. But because of the variety of attacks with the Nameless King, throwing lightning bolts at you and so on and so forth, and the fact that you can also get him exhausted to the point, or no, it's you. I can't remember what exactly it is that you do to get him weak enough to where you can actually riposte him. Because I know you can't parry him. I think it's you just stun him or something. I can't remember. It's been a while since I did that fight.
I can't remember what it is, but it's like I think it's like you deal enough damage to him in a short amount of time that it
yeah, something along those lines.
It.
But yeah, the Ancient Dragon is nowhere near as interesting of a fight. It's just, unfortunately, because of the way the arena's laid out and everything, I find it to be definitely a harder fight. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that is everything that I have there.
Good stuff. All right. Well, let's get into our news topics for tonight. So the first thing, I think we can just get this one out of the way, is that apparently Half-Life 3 is not only in development, but it is currently playable end to end. It is, I mean, it's more or less in an alpha state, but it's complete. At least in terms of being able to be playable entirely. And this is according to Eurogamer. So this is a Valve insider, Tyler McVicker, and he's saying that the eagerly anticipated sequel could be announced as early as this summer, with a possible release before the end of 2025, probably winter. All right, so this was first reported by Engadget. McVicker gave a live stream Q&A packed with explosive clues and hints about what's to come, and is once again stressed, this game is not VR. Half-Life 3 is not a VR title. HLX, which is the codename for Half-Life 3, is being playtested so religiously and so widely that there are individuals who will just talk, McVicker said. I personally have a policy of avoiding any story-related questions or information wherever possible, so I currently have avoided all of them. But I've been offered it by people who are trustworthy, and I know some of my contemporaries have been given it, so there is information out there about the plot. I'm not gonna say anything about that. You may have already read it, but we'll just say that there's possible tie-ins. That's the extent of what I'm gonna say. But he said that the game this is the furthest that Half-Life HLX has ever been. Period. This game is playable end to end. Period. Other Half-Life 3 / Episode 3 projects have never been that far. And they're optimizing, polishing, and they're probably content locked. And if they're not, then they're mechanic locked. And there is apparently some type of procedural generation system, but it's been misunderstood by the general public. The way Valve is going about it, that it is akin to taking the AI director from the Left 4 Dead 2 and making it significantly more powerful. It's not changing geometry, it's instead changing entity placement, like doors, physics, props, enemies, items, NPCs of any kind. And he disputes that the story will be procedurally generated, which is good, because that would be bizarre. Yeah, so, and I guess apparently the original game was in development back in 2013 and 2014, was set to be procedurally generated, replayable game that fused Left 4 Dead inspired gameplay with the scripted story elements, but it was canceled because it was built on the unfinished Source 2 engine. And that is essentially everything we have on that, but what are your thoughts on this?
I would like this to be true. I think a lot of people would like to see Half-Life 3 finally come out. It's one of those. It's one of those. It's one of those myths that people are always trying to find, like Bigfoot and the Loch Ness monster. And who knows? This game's probably in like Area 51 complete or something like that. But I do have hope that this could be true, that this is actually going to happen, and that we could at least get some sort of announcement this year. Even though Valve, again, has a horrible history with counting to 3, but granted, though, they finally broke that streak. They finally broke that curse by releasing SteamOS 3.0, so, there could be that we're starting to get 3s now. But I do at least find that there's a higher chance of this happening than Bloodborne at this point. That's essentially where I am right now with that. Now, as far as like some of the stuff that was discussed, I really don't know. I don't know. I'm hoping that the procedural generation isn't all that egregious. I mean, while he says it's misunderstood and that it's mainly just like placements of things like enemies and doors and stuff, at the same time, I'm not certain how I would feel about that, just because I don't know, like, I feel like if you're going to have procedural generation, that should be in a game that is procedurally generated. Like, if you're playing a roguelike, for example, that's procedurally generated. You don't go into Hades thinking, okay, everything's going to be the same all the way through and through. If you're playing, especially, I mean, there are roguelike first-person shooters, but if you're playing a first-person shooter just, as a first-person shooter, you don't go in thinking, okay, things could change when I play it this time. I mean, part of the reason why is because, if you're going in, especially if you're trying to if you're trying to improve your run on a game, or if you're trying to, do better, especially with things that, say, require you to clear a level within a certain amount of time, or, if you're just trying to do a no damage run, replaying levels makes it easier for you to understand how they work, understand the enemy layout, so that way you can get through there and be more efficient with things. If a level's procedurally generated, there's always that random chance factor that you're not going to be prepared for. I think just considering the fact that the other games, and I mean, for the most part, most of Valve's games aren't procedurally generated. I mean, well, of course they said Left 4 Dead 2, but I mean, like, as far as with core single player experiences, so like Portal and Half-Life, those aren't procedurally generated. There's a core. Each of their levels have been meticulously designed. Like, there's human thought behind there. So if you put it behind procedural generation, it kind of robs that human elements, I would say, to it. So I don't like that. Mm-hmm. And I'm hoping that something like this would be more akin to, say, if there is procedural generation, I would rather have that be part as, say, like some side content. Like, say there's say there's like maybe something similar to how or similar to, well, maybe not necessarily the Ragnarok Valhalla in Ragnarok, in God of War Ragnarok, something sort of like that, or how some games have randomizers. If it's something like that side content, I don't have I don't have a problem with that. But if it's part of the actual main game, I don't know. I just really would prefer if they just kept things purely designed by a human in that aspect. But I do like the fact that they, or at least based on what we see here, that's not a VR title. I think that's something that kind of would, I mean, it would turn off people, who don't care for it. But just in general, there are fewer VR players than there are just game players in general, because, you have to get the VR headset. You have to make sure your hardware supports VR. It's powerful enough to do that. And it's just not something I would prefer. So I'm glad that this is, from what we see here, it's a title that isn't VR, and it's just a standard game like 1 and 2 were. I mean, if it happens to support VR, that's fine. Some games, can do that, but granted, I feel like that would take some extra work to be put into it. But I am just glad that it is sort of just your standard game that doesn't require any VR at all. But yeah, maybe we'll definitely see what happens. It's said maybe it'll be announced, this summer, maybe later. I don't think it'll come if it's an alpha. I don't think it's gonna come out this year. I'm gonna be honest. I don't see it coming out this year. I don't think they're gonna be able to polish it that quickly. I would estimate maybe next summer, maybe next winter at latest, but definitely not this year. I could be wrong. I could be proven wrong, but I just doubt it. But that is essentially, though, everything that I have.
Yeah, I think this is real. I think that this is probably the most convinced I've ever been of a Half-Life 3 rumor. That being said, I also fully recognize that um, until it's actually announced, there's no reason to say it is real. I mean, like, I believe it is, but if I find out it's not, I'm just gonna be like, meh, I don't care. I mean, it's not that big of a deal to me. It's like, for years we've waited for Half-Life 3, especially, I have, because of the fact that I played Half-Life 2 and Episode 1 and 2 many years ago, and I played Blue Shift and Opposing Force. I technically never played the original Half-Life. I played Black Mesa, which is a remake of the original Half-Life in the Source engine, but I played that before it was finished. They released it initially as a free game, and it did not include the last area because they hadn't finished making it yet. Even though I did eventually, once they completed it, I did buy it, but I just never got back to playing it. And unfortunately, as far as I know, actually, I didn't even look into this, but I don't think that my save would have transferred over from the original version over to the full version. I honestly haven't checked, though. But either way, I hope this is true. I mean, it's very much one of those things where if it's not true, I'm not going to be brokenhearted because we've gone this long without Half-Life 3 actually happening. It will just be a very welcome, pleasant surprise if it actually does come out. If it's actually really something that is not only in development, but more or less complete to some degree. Yeah, as of right now, I'm basically just going to say, let's wait for the official word. And until we get the official word, it doesn't exist. Even though I believe, however much hopium there might be in there, I do believe that it's actually a real thing. And beyond that, I'm just like, I don't know if I need to see the game before I have a firm opinion on it, but I do think, based on Valve's track record and the quality of the games that they've made in the past, especially because of how few they've made, and the fact that this game it's been over 20 years since Half-Life 2 came out. So, I mean, it's been about 18 years since Half-Life 2 Episode 2 came out. So, hopefully it's not going to be something where they wait another 2 years to match, to do the 20th anniversary of Half-Life 2 Episode 2. But either way, we'll just wait and see. All right. Well, we definitely have some interesting stuff going on with both Xbox and Nintendo. So I think let's go ahead and start off by talking about Xbox, because we've both had more positive things to say than not about the direction that Xbox was going between Game Pass and everything else, despite the fact that neither of us have ever owned an Xbox and don't have any plans to ever buy one. But despite that, Microsoft is raising the prices of all of its Xbox consoles globally and has announced that it will charge $80 for first-party games starting later this year. It doesn't say specifically whether that's going to be for every single game. I would guess probably not. It's probably going to be more of a case-by-case basis. But to kind of summarize, I'm just going to talk about the U.S. prices because that's most relevant to our audience. But the Series S 512 gigabyte model, which was $300, is going up to $380. The 1 terabyte version of the Series S is going from $349.99 or $350 up to $430. The Series X digital is going up from $449 or $450 to $550. The Series X, which was $500, is going up to $600. The Series X with 2 terabytes, which, yeah, that I don't think that's all digital. No, it's not. Which was $600, is going up to $730. The controllers are staying at the same price, at least for the regular wireless controllers. The special edition and limited edition are each going up by $10. The Elite is not changing. The Series 2 Core Elite controller has not changed, still $150. The Series 2 Full is going from $180 up to $200. And then the wireless headset's going up by $10. The stereo headset, which I believe is wired, is not changing. It's still $65. But then, of course, like I said, $80 for first-party games. Not really confirmed whether that is every single game or if it's going to be just certain games. But whew. What are your thoughts on this?
Wow. You know, just looking at the games, the very thing that I knew was going to happen has happened. With Sorry, not Sony. Sorry, Sony. I didn't mean to throw you on their bus this time. With Nintendo starting to raise their prices to $80, I knew that was just going to be the floodgate opening up. I mean, people say, oh, tariffs, this and that, but these publishers have been looking for an excuse to charge more for their games. Let's just be honest here. If they could have done this sooner, they would have done it. And so now once one of them is starting to raise the prices, now they're all going to start doing that now. So I'm not surprised by the fact that Microsoft is raising their prices for games so soon. Maybe that surprises me just a little bit, but, I probably shouldn't be that surprised even there. But, I wasn't expecting all these prices for the consoles, though, which is just insane. I mean, going from $80 to $100 plus for depending on what system you're getting, that's quite an extra bit of money to spend there, and I'm just like, yikes. And I mean, the crazy thing too is just the fact that also it's not like you could say, again, tariffs. This is the thing that's being done globally, so like every country is having the prices raised here, and it's just insane. And then also, thinking about this is the fact that, and this is something that, you think about, people talk about the prices of, manufacturing stuff that goes up. Okay, so say I bought the excuse that the prices for physical is going up. Why are the digital games going up then? Why do they have to go up at such a high price? You could say, well, they gotta manufacture the discs, they gotta like ship them and stuff like that. They have to pay for storage and shelving at stores. Yeah, but tell me, how much does that cost if you're doing it digitally again? Because you gotta ship it. Oh wait, you don't have to ship it. Well, you gotta package. Oh, you don't have to package it. oh well, because oh wait, we can't tariff a digital product. You know, why are those being jumping up to $80? Like that's the thing that people have never explained to me, is saying like, yeah, it makes sense that these games go up, but it's like, all right, then why is it? I mean, if you were to say that it only goes up for physical, I'm not gonna accept it. I'm not gonna like it, but I'll at least see the reasoning behind there. But I don't see any reason why a digital game should go up. At least at the very least, if a digital was $10 cheaper, then I could comprehend the logic behind it. But if you're saying that the price of the digital is the same price as the physical, that's definitely where you've lost me. But you know, I was talking about this with someone yesterday, and it's funny because he has he has the guy who I got the PC for it, he has an Xbox Series X, and I said, it's funny how, you know, essentially you paid less for that thing closer to launch than the people who are buying it now, and it's just a complete inverse of how, you know, buying a console has been, where it's more expensive at launch and then over time the prices drop. And I mean, just this entire generation though, have we even had one price drop for consoles, like for any of them?
No. None
Yeah,
of them.
and so
Apart from like
it's just
bundles during the holidays and that sort of thing, but that's the most.
yeah. So it's really something. And I mean, when you think about it, what they'll probably even do is just say, when, you know, Christmas comes around, they'll say, hey, we've got a special sale, we're gonna give you a discount on these consoles at the prices they were before the prices were increased. And it's like, wow, thanks for nothing. But it's just bad all across the board. I mean, you know, all these price increases and stuff, it's insane. But then when you think about it, it's also, well, you know, of course PC prices are going up as well, but when people say, well, look at how expensive it is to be a PC gamer, and then you're starting to start paying for PC prices right there. So you can't really talk too much about PC being expensive when you're starting to also start paying for those prices as well. But yeah, this just makes me glad that I'm not in the market for getting a console, because this is just insane. And then, you know, also think about the fact that you're paying for this box and for these games, and it's such a closed off space too. Like you're fully restricted to playing these games and using these products within this one particular ecosystem. It's not like you can use it for anything else, essentially. So it's sort of like, it really makes me, it just sort of gives me more appreciation of the fact that, you know, I'm playing on a system where I have flexibility with, you know, what accessories I use, what hardware I use, what software I use, what storefront I use, and, you know, having that liberation that ends. But yeah, that's essentially everything that I have to say regarding this.
Well, one of the first things I want to say is, you know, I'm not someone who gets outraged much by all these, you know, price increases, regardless of who does them. Mostly just because I'm typically not all that much of a person who just gets outraged at stuff a whole lot. Now, I mean, there are things that make me mad, but it's not video games. At least not other than, you know, like certain boss fights in Dark Souls or whatever. But no, when it comes to stuff like this, regardless of who does it, I can say that lots of negative things about it, but in general, I'm not like mad about it. And to be clear, when I say I'm not mad about it, I'm not saying that, oh, I'm accepting it and like I think it's great, or, you know, that I'm gonna make excuses for them or whatever. I'm just gonna say that I'm just gonna keep not buying it, because that's how I I show my displeasure with this, I'll talk about it. And in this case, like, these prices going up, it's stupid. There's no reason why this should be happening. Yes, of course, obviously. They sell consoles as a loss leader. They lose money on every console that they sell, but they are making up for it in the software side. Whether it's selling actual games or, in the case of Microsoft, doing Game Pass. And that's how they make their money. They make their money through that. But as you said, it's very obvious the whole reason why Microsoft is doing this is not because of the fact that it's not because of tariffs. It's not because of prices going up for stuff in general. It's just basically they were looking for an excuse, and Nintendo gave them that excuse because they decided we're going to start pushing $80 games. And Microsoft's like, well, if Nintendo can get away with it, there's no reason we can't, especially because right now we have goodwill with people because of the value that Game Pass is. And while I still think Game Pass itself is still a really good value for what you get, especially if you don't want to buy games all the time and you'd rather just have a rental service where you can do all that, regardless of how I personally wouldn't use Game Pass, because I don't really subscribe to things that I don't make good enough use of, and of course I have a ton of games already, so there's just zero reason for me to do Game Pass, apart from it making it, tactically easier if I wanted to be able to access certain new games. And I mean, like, I've gone back and forth on the idea of trying out Game Pass, particularly like for Doom the Dark Ages, for example, or Indiana Jones, or various other games where I'm like, I wouldn't mind trying that game out. But then I look at it and I say, but am I going to stick with that game? And if the answer is I'm not sure or no, then I decide right away, well, there's no point in me doing Game Pass because I'm not going to make use of it. And of course, what Microsoft counts on a lot with people when it comes to Game Pass is that people will sign up. They might try out a game. They might even play a full game. And then they'll just keep that subscription rolling, whether they're using it or not. And so then Microsoft's basically just getting money every month for nothing. Rather, they're technically providing a service, but the users are not getting anything out of it because they're not actually using it. They're just paying for it. And I think that happens a lot more often than people realize or want to admit. But that all aside, these prices going up, like, this is something that has not happened before this generation. Like, every single generation before this, as time went on, like you said, the consoles get cheaper. They do lower prices. I mean, like, they do a full price drop, and then as time goes on, it gets cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. And this is the first generation where it's actually gone up over time. And it's ridiculous that this is happening. But the worst part about this is that even though Microsoft is the first of the big two to do this, of the big two console manufacturers, because Nintendo's it's like its own area, Sony's going to follow suit. Mm-hmm. Anyone who says that they're not, they're either in denial or they're lying. And I think it's more people are in denial than not. I know plenty of people who, like, they fully acknowledge Sony's probably going to do this too. Now they may hold off a little bit longer because of the fact that they kind of want to let the shock and the shock pass and the smoke blow over before they start doing the same thing. But they already raised the price of their consoles in a lot of countries around the world very recently. We didn't even talk about it because it was just kind of like, okay, yeah, it's not terribly surprising. And we knew that the U.S. is like their biggest center for where they, sell their consoles. So they haven't done the U.S. yet. But I think that it's going to happen. And I would say If it doesn't happen this year, which I could definitely see them holding off, it will happen next year. Sony's going to do the same thing. They're going to start raising the prices, and next generation, their new console is probably going to be a premium price. At best, I could see them saying, we will do a $600 model that's digital only, and then a $700 model that's digital, or that's digital and physical, or that comes with a disk drive or whatever on the side. That's actually not like part of the unit, but that's attachable. And, or, you know, that it might be kind of similar to what they have with the slim version right now, where you can attach the disk drive to the system, but you have to get it. You still have to buy it separately. Yeah. You know, as the meme suggests, begun, the video game crash has. It's going that direction. The crash is coming with these consoles, especially. I don't think it's as much of an issue with PC. I mean, it is because it is to some degree because Nvidia is ridiculous in what they charge for their graphics cards. And they're certainly contributing to it, but I think that PC's growing a lot more than consoles. Consoles are pretty stagnant in terms of their user base. Haven't really gone past that. I mean, they have like roughly around 200 million people who are interested in doing consoles, but the market just doesn't really seem to be growing. Like, and for every bit of growth they might be getting, they're also getting shrinkage at the same time, and so you get people leaving consoles, and then you have some new people coming to consoles, but then some people leaving at the same time, and it kind of ends up balancing out. I find it hard to believe that it's going to expand much more with consoles, because especially with just the way prices have been, you know, people are just tired of it. So I know plenty of people who they specifically did not get a console this generation because they were waiting for a price drop. And it hasn't happened, and it looks like it's not going to happen. It's only just going to be price increases. So unless they can find themselves a used console, they're basically out of luck on that, from that standpoint. And I don't know how many people it's actually going to draw them to decide, oh, I guess it's time to go for PC. I think it probably won't be a whole lot of people, but it's just, this stuff is nonsense. And it makes me glad, and no superiority in this, just saying, it makes me glad that PC is my primary platform. Because, yeah, it's more expensive initially to build a PC, but I'm pretty well set for a while. And whether I decide to upgrade my graphics card in the next few years or just keep rocking the 2080 Ti until I can't use it anymore, you know, for now at least I have what I need. And then I have an extra portable option for games that are too demanding for the Steam Deck. And I have a massive library that's ever growing. By the day, even if I don't buy games, even if I just go to Amazon anytime they give out free games with Prime. And yes, I know it's technically not free because you're paying for Prime, but it's like, I'm paying for Prime for the free shipping, you know, and to some degree for Prime Video, but mostly for the free shipping, because I order plenty from them. Free and fast shipping. And the games that I get, since like probably about 95% of the ones that I claim are GOG games, once I get them, they're mine for good. I own those games now. Whereas, you know, with these subscription services, whether you're dealing with Game Pass or PlayStation Plus or Nintendo Switch Online, you are getting rentals. They're completely temporary. Once you unsubscribe, you lose access to those games. With this, even though I'm paying for a Prime subscription every year, any games I get with GOG, once I get the key, once I redeem it, it's mine. The game is mine. And the only situation where potentially those could be taken away would be like with Epic. If you get free games from Epic, they could take those away. But even then, you're still not paying for those games specifically. You're not having to be subscribed to Amazon Prime in order to have those games. You just, once you claim them, they're there. And at least with GOG, of course, they're DRM free. So once you claim the codes, add them to your account, you own those games. And that's all there is to it. But anyway, I've said more than enough, and the TLDL of that is I don't like the fact that they're raising the prices. I'm not going to buy their consoles any more than I was going to before, so it's unchanged from that standpoint. And this is just the beginning. It's going to happen with PlayStation, and it's just a matter of time. So that's all I got on that topic.
Well said.
All right, you want to start talking about this Nintendo game cart situation? Well, let's specifically the digital game keys thing. We could talk about the carts as well. I guess we could probably just combine the two topics, but
yeah. So it's like there a particular one you wanted to discuss first, or just
we can just kind of do a general overview of both.
Okay. So Nintendo has they've clarified essentially how the digital game keys work. As far as if you get a game, you are able to transfer it over to a new device. Let me pull up the thing here that mentions it more specifically. But essentially, you're able to transfer it once you connect it to your accounts and log into it from your, I guess, whatever new Switch device you're using, then you'll be able to transfer it over there by connecting to it. And then it's essentially locked to a particular Switch console, but then you're able to transfer it over there. But let me quickly actually just pull up the specifics, though. Okay, yeah. So here's like the actual overview that they have here for this. Oh no, wait, no. This is this actually isn't it. This is them talking about the key cards, but yeah, so I mean, essentially the digital is just them trying to treat it the same way as they would treat a cartridge, where it's locked to a particular device, but you can still transfer it over. It's just the fact that, again, because it's digital, you have to go through the process of, connecting a new device to you, or logging into your device, your account on the new device, and then just trying to transfer it over from there. So it's essentially they're treating that the same way as a physical cartridge, but just in a more digital format, essentially, regarding that. Now, regarding their key cards, this is, I guess you could say, I don't want to say it improves, but it's a new version of their code in a box. So you get the cartridge, which is essentially acting as a physical key, akin to like some type of DRM, and you have to download the game. It doesn't contain the full game data, and you actually have to download it from the internet in order to actually get the game on your console. And this is, well, some have theorized this is sort of a compromise that Nintendo made with third-party devs, especially publishers, I should say, who, because Nintendo only has made certain Switch 2 cartridge sizes, so they don't have, like, I think it's 64 is the highest one, and then they have, I think, 8 and 16 gigabyte sizes. Like, they don't have 32 gigabyte size cartridges. So, sort of as a compromise, you could say they made those game key cards. And the good news is the fact that it's better than digital code in a box, because with the code in a box, it's a one-time use. However, you cannot download the game to the cartridge at all. It goes directly onto your system. So if you, it'll never essentially be, it'll never actually have the full game on the cartridge itself. It's just a key you insert, and you just have to go ahead and download it onto your Nintendo Switch system. And that's essentially it for that. So before I get into some of my thoughts regarding these, what do you think about everything here?
All right, well, let's start with the digital game cards. This stuff is confusing. I gotta be honest. It is very confusing. So the positive side of things, the idea of being able to lend out digital games with these virtual game cards, is actually a cool idea. I think it's an interesting way to make use of digital games in a different way. However, the fact of the matter is that you already have ways to do that on PC and Xbox in a different way of being able to share your games with other people. And I don't know, like, I can't remember all the specific details of how all that works, but like, I know, for example, with Steam, I can create an account for one of my kids, and I can allow them to play any games that I allow them to play that are part of my library. I don't have to buy the games a second time. But there's no like digital game card nonsense where you have to deal with this 14-day time limit, anything else. You can share the games with your family members. It's not a problem. But even still, I think that the idea in general of being able to lend out digital game cards to people, I like the idea because of the fact that it definitely opens up the ability to share games more easily, which is something that Nintendo has not really made super easy in the past. But it's still way more complicated than it needs to be. Why can't they just do a simple system like what Valve does with Steam, like what Xbox does, and I think PlayStation even does to some degree, just being able to share your games with other people? It's just they make it way more complicated than it needs to be. And then on top of that, there's also some confusion here for me, because I'm getting like different stories. I think that from what I can tell, looking at what the update notes are for the current Switch, is that games that are, if the game is already downloaded to like, if you have more than one Switch, if you have the game already downloaded to both systems, the one that already has the game downloaded still has the option to play, just they have to be connected to the internet. Basically what they've already had going on, because like the way it's been set up before, to give a specific example, or a more specific example, like if I want to play Super Smash Brothers on my Switch, and my nephews who have my old Switch want to play Super Smash Brothers, well, Smash Brothers is installed on theirs, but if I'm playing, unless they're playing offline or vice versa, if I start playing while they're playing, it's going to kick them out of the game because of the fact that I'm playing, because mine is the primary Switch. And the same would be true on the opposite side of things. If they want to play, or if they are wanting to play the game and they try booting it up when I'm already playing it, then it will kick me out, I believe. It's been a while since I've had that specific thing come up. I think it's come up with Minecraft before when the kids have been playing. So that part, it's like, yeah, it was a little complicated, but it worked more or less. I had basically, I loaded up all the games on that Switch that were kid appropriate, that I thought they would enjoy playing, Mario Kart and Smash Brothers and various other games. And they don't have any access to the eShop, so they can't download anything from my library that's not approved. That they don't have any way to download anything on the eShop unless I put in my password and download it for them, or my brother-in-law does. But now the way it seems to be set up is that because every digital game has been turned into a virtual game card, in order for them to play those games that are already installed on their Switch, they have to do the virtual game card thing and then have to be near my Switch so that they can transfer it over so that they can play it for 14 days, and then it'll be automatically returned to me. And it's just like, why are you guys making this so complicated? And then when I look at the update notes, at least that are posted on Video Games Chronicle, seems to indicate that as long as they're connected to the internet, it's still working the same way that it was before. But, I mean, assuming they have the game fully downloaded, but the digital game card also makes it so if they have that, then they don't have to worry about being connected to the internet after their first initial time getting the virtual game card, because it basically just makes it you can play offline. You don't have to worry about checking the internet connection every time to make sure that you have a valid license because you have the virtual game card. And that part, okay, that's fine. But when it's something that it's like, okay, this is technically my Switch, it's just my second Switch, they should just be able to continue to play the game. And I'm super confused on how it actually works. And of course, the fact that I haven't actually played my Switch in a while because my kids have been playing it so much, I haven't really been able to check and see how does this actually work. And I think that there are still ways around it with, going in airplane mode, turning off Wi-Fi, whatever it is that's required. I think there are still ways to make it work, but I shouldn't have to do that. Nintendo's just making... They try to solve a problem with their own unique solution, and their unique solution just ends up causing more problems. And this is just like how Nintendo is in general. They try to solve a problem that's already been solved with their own unique version of solving that problem, and then that new problem, that solution might sort of kind of work in a way that's good, but it also causes new problems with the old way of doing things that in some ways was already better. And across the board, this is just, I don't like it. I mean, I will say, yes, it is a big step up over what they had with the Wii U and 3DS and prior generations, where you had to buy multiple copies in order to be able to play it on multiple systems, at least unless you had physical. With the digital games, you had to buy multiple copies of the game in order to be able to play it on more than one system, and that was always a hassle. I hate that. But this new system is just, it's confusing and it's complicated, overly complicated. Now, in terms of the digital, the game card keys or game key cards, whatever they're calling them, that one, find it here. That one I really like. I agree it's better than the code in a box. And some of this is basically what they already kind of had, where you have part of the game on the cartridge and then the rest of the game you're just downloading, and it's basically just a key to download it. And while on the one hand, this is not necessary, I mean, it's obviously better than a code in box, because then you're not in a position where, like, if you resell your game, then they're out of luck because they can't use the code anymore. But the big problem with this is the simple fact that there will come a time when those servers are going to be gone. People will not be able to download these games anymore. And then these game cartridges will be completely worthless because you won't be able to get that information anymore. And who knows? I mean, it may be, maybe Nintendo, if we give them the benefit of the doubt, they'll, keep things up 20 years to where you can still download the games. But I have a feeling that that's not going to happen. I have a feeling that people are going to be just up a creek without a paddle when it comes to many years from now, wanting to play these games and finding that these physical game key cards don't actually provide people access to the game anymore because of the fact that those games no longer exist on a remote server. And it looks like it's going to be the majority of third-party games like this, where you're going to be stuck with these type of game key cards. And it is something that honestly may very well put me off of buying physical games anymore for Nintendo. At least the Switch 2 versions. The Switch 1 versions, it'll just depend on the game. I mean, like, I'd probably still... I don't think this is something that Nintendo's doing with their games, with their first-party games. I think their first-party games are actually going to be fully on the cartridges, if I'm not mistaken. And I could be wrong on that, so correct me if I'm wrong.
I think you're right.
So, like, from that standpoint, like, I'm totally fine with, what Nintendo's doing, because, that they actually know how to compress their games properly so that they can fit them on a cartridge. And, of course, they're first party, so they're, making a better effort to try and make that fit, whereas third parties, they don't really have any incentive to do it because the game cartridge, the game cards are a lot more expensive for these big games that take up a lot of space. And as much as I am hoping that maybe at least some of them will shell out the extra cash to get their game fully on the cartridge, I think that's probably going to be very few and far between. And honestly, like, it also just makes me sad because, the whole point of buying physical games is that you have that physical thing that has the full game there, or at least the majority of the game, enough of the game that you can work with it, that you can play it without having to download the majority of the game. And that's just going away. And I know that, those people who are, especially those people who are very anti-PC, are going to say, oh, well, you don't have any physical games on PC anymore. You haven't for a long time. And yet, that's absolutely true. But the big difference is that there are multiple ways to get those games. And there are ways to own those games for good. And it's a lot easier than it is on consoles, because I don't have to mod my PC to make that happen. Whereas with consoles, you basically have to mod the console in order to be able to keep your digital games fully and completely yours. So, I think that's basically everything I have to say on this, but I will just say, as a quick summary, I don't like this. I don't like either of these things. And I just wish Nintendo would stop being Nintendo and just do things the better way that so many other companies already do it. So, that's it.
Yeah, I definitely agree a whole lot with you regarding this. Now, regarding the digital, particularly with the game share, one of the biggest things I kind of dislike about the borrowing feature is the fact that there is a 14 day limit, and sure, you can always lend it back out to someone, but I feel like A, maybe the limit should be longer, or B, just lend it out to them, let them play for as long as they want, and then you can manually just take it back essentially once they're done and stuff. I mean, I don't feel like they should arbitrarily be forced to have to finish the game within a certain period of time before it's automatically just like snatched back from them. And what also made me wonder because I never saw this anywhere. So like, do you happen to know if this is the case? If the game goes back, do they lose their save data?
I don't think so, because most games have their save data tied to the console.
Okay, then. Okay, because I say if you have to like get it all done within a certain amount of time, and then you have the game like withdrawn and returned back to the original owner, and then get it and then have to start all over again, that would really tick me off, frankly speaking. Especially for playing something that is a larger game, like an
Elden
RPG.
Yeah, Elden Ring when that's out on Switch too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and that's also game key card too.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah. Wow. But yeah, the digital, just as you said, it's overly complicated. And I mean, they definitely could improve that. But frankly, though, I just think that the physical game key card situation is just worse because, as you said, it's essentially worthless after the servers go down, and the fact that there's no way to get around it. You can't put the game data on the cartridge. It's just they're acting as essentially just de novo. Essentially, I mean, in the aspect of the fact that it logs in, makes sure that this game is registered to your account, and then lets you play the game after that point. So like,
well, I don't think that the physical cards are tied to an account. I'm pretty sure that's something that they said.
Well, I meant metaphorically, as far as like when you play a game from Nuvo,
okay.
it checks online to make sure you own this, and then you can play it.
Yeah.
Like, it's like you said, it's worthless after the servers go down, and there's not even really a point in collecting them either, because sure, I mean, as you said, at least with the Switch games that have switched to upgrades, even if I mean, it's horrible enough that the fact that essentially just getting the Switch cartridge and you just get the Switch to update downloads, but at least there's still a game there that you can play, even if you can't play the Switch 2 version. Like, I mean, after the servers go down, you can at least still play the base game. With these cards, though, you can't do anything. And I think it's even more ridiculous that some companies, mainly like third parties who can possibly get it on a physical cartridge, aren't. Like Bravely Default. Like, there's no reason why that can't be on a physical cartridge. I mean, it's not that big of a game. Yeah. It was originally a 3DS game. So like, you're saying you can't get that game on a cartridge, get all the data on the cartridge. There's no excuse there. But the fact that also so many games, and it also makes you wonder, I mean, we talked about this before, if, say, Metal Gear Solid 3 Delta, gets surprised and is announced for the Switch 2, could that one also just be a Switch key card situation as well? And it's...
Well, definitely will be, without question.
It's just all so tiring. I mean, I mean, honestly, in a sense, I would rather them. I mean, it's almost the point. It's like, what's the point then of making the physical cartridge? I mean, there's no real point to it, because you can't say that you're gonna help save space because you have to download the game anyway. So you might as well just be in a digital version. All you're really just getting is just the box, and just like have it displayed, and it's meaningless. So I mean, like, there's no resale value, there's no real collector's value there. I mean, unless you say want to have every quote unquote physical game, or at least if you want to have every game as part of a series, then yeah, you can do that. But at the same time, it's outside of that, there's really no point, and you might as well just get the digital version or get it somewhere else. Especially if you're gonna get a physical version, because some games like Elden Ring has an actual physical version on PS5 and Xbox. But yeah, and considering the fact that up until this point, I would say that Nintendo has been possibly the best regarding physical. as far as like what they've offered and how they've had more games offered physically and have had a bigger have had a bigger promotion of physical games. It really makes me feel like definitely the next console generation, we're probably gonna see we're gonna see like such a drastic change where it's gonna be harder to find a physical. There'll probably be a bigger push for the digital versions of consoles rather than ones which have a physical hard drive or cartridge slot. But yeah, that's everything that I have there.
All right. Well, I think with as late as it is, probably just kind of call it here, but let's go ahead and get into our recommendations and dissuasions. So why don't you start us off?
All right, so my recommendation is going to be Mandragora Veil of the Whispers of the Witch Veil. So if you enjoy 2D Souls-likes, especially as I said earlier, if you enjoyed playing Salt and Sanctuary, which kind of is a second recommendation, I would say, if you enjoy Souls-likes, you'll definitely enjoy that one. But if you enjoyed Salt and Sanctuary, though, I think you'll definitely enjoy this. It's definitely sort of an expanded, to a degree, expanded version of that game. Although, only thing I will say is that if you're playing on the Steam Deck, to lower post-processing, because that's really hampering the performance. And once you turn that down, then you can actually get a consistent 60 FPS on the Steam Deck. But just in general, I've enjoyed the game so far, up until my roadblocks, but it's been proven to be a good distraction from Expedition 33, which is not something I would ever think I would mention after playing it last week. But yeah, that's my recommendation.
All right. Well, I have a few recommendations. First of all, I'm definitely going to recommend Expedition 33 and its soundtrack. I mean, if you can only get one, get the game, but you should get both. Well, I guess I should say, play the game. If you find the soundtrack as great as we did, buy the soundtrack. Or at least, like listen to it on Spotify or Apple Music or whatever. Because you can listen to it in those places as well. My next recommendation is going to be getting a Logitech G502 mouse. They have wired and wireless versions, and I'm sure they probably actually have newer versions as well, but one of these things, this thing has a bunch of buttons on it. You can set custom configurations and everything, and it's fantastic. I love it. I've had it for years, and I love it. I actually had to replace one of them because the clicker wore out after a while. But even with that being said, I definitely think it's easily the best mouse I've ever used. And with that, I recommend making use of custom bindings for different applications. Just because that will save you a lot of trouble when you're doing stuff that's very repetitive and all of that. And it could also be, of course, great for gaming. So, going back to Expedition 33, I have a couple more recommendations. One of those is that you make sure you actually use your Luminas, because it took me until about halfway into Act 1 to realize that I could do that. And so for a while, I was just using my Pictos. So just those badges, whatever, that gave me the abilities, and that's all I was doing. And I didn't have any Luminas equipped, even after I had learned all of the different abilities tied to the Pictos. So use those. But the other thing is, try to learn the audio cues, if not just the visual cues, for dodging and parrying attacks. Especially parrying. It's so worth it if you can get it down, and it's so satisfying. And it will not only save you from taking damage, but you will also deal damage in return if you learn how to parry properly. And even if you can't learn how to parry properly, dodging is much easier. Still has its challenges, of course, but then at the very least you can avoid taking damage, which is still better than nothing. So there's that. But yeah, that is what I have for recommendations. So,
Very good pearls of wisdom there.
and dissuasions.
All right, my dissuasion is going to be: do not use HDMI if you're hooking up your PC to a monitor. That is something that I have seen happen, and at first I was wondering why they weren't getting a higher frame rates, why they weren't able to access their full refresh rate, and I said, are you using HDMI or using display ports? And then learned that they were using HDMI instead of display ports, and then after that, then they were able to get the full access to their refresh rate. So definitely do not use HDMI if you're trying to connect a computer to a monitor. Use DisplayPort out. And also on that note, actually, also make sure you do not plug it into the motherboard. Plug it into the graphics card.
Yes.
That's all I gotta say for dissuasions.
My dissuasion is related to Expedition 33. Actually, there's three things here. So first of all is do not use anyone other than Mael when fighting the boss of the Gestral Arena in Act 1. And this is a story-related thing. Just make sure that when you fight that boss, you are using Mael, because that way you get what is one of the best weapons in the entire game for her. So there's that. Another thing is, you may make the mistake that I did, but you'll learn quickly. Do not attempt to fight the boss of, or the leader of the Gestral village until late game, because you will not be able to do much of any damage to her, and she will kill you in one hit every time if you get hit. The last thing is kind of a mixed dissuasion. So if you want to have the best performance, or if you want to have good performance and good visuals, don't play Expedition 33 on the Steam Deck. If that is your only option and you really can just deal with sometimes drops into the 20s and having to learn a different kind of parry timing than you get with higher frame rates, then the game is playable. It's just not anywhere near as smooth of an experience. And definitely parrying and dodging is much more difficult when you have that lower frame rate than it is when you're playing at over 60. So that's what I got. All right. Where can people find you?
They can find me on my channel. I am Xeracon. That's IAMXERACON. So youtube.com/@IamXeracon. No new content this week. Still have to just get around to doing it. But yeah, we'll see when that happens.
All right. Well, you can find me on YouTube at the Frozen Gamer 87, which is my gaming channel. Hasn't been any new content for a while, but there is plenty of stuff to check out on there. I have various things that are in the plans. It's just they haven't been recorded yet. So at this point, it's very much a TBD situation. If you've listened to the podcast at all for a while, you've probably heard me talk about some of these things. I just haven't gotten to any of them because of the time of life I'm in right now. But I'm hoping to start getting more content out, especially around the time the Switch 2 drops, but hopefully in between there as well. I'll find some time to work on stuff. But then also we have the YouTube channel for the podcast, which is YouTube at the Orange Box Podcast, which is also on Rumble. And you can find our video episode every Friday at 7 a.m. Central Time. The audio-only version goes live every Friday at 12 a.m. Central Time, and that is on all major audio podcast platforms, which includes YouTube Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Deezer, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music. Basically, any major podcast platform, you will be able to find the podcast. There's also the Orange Box Pod Clips, which is on YouTube and Rumble, although YouTube has more of the older stuff, Rumble has more of the new stuff. And I have not done any clips for a while on either, but that's where, at least once it's more consistent, there will be more of the digestible, shorter clips with our different discussion topics. And finally, I have my YouTube cooking channel, Not Authentic But Delicious. That's YouTube at NABD Cooking. There is a bunch of videos on there, something around like 40 recipes that I put up. I haven't done anything new in a while, and as with everything else, it's just kind of on the back burner in terms of priorities, but there's still a lot of great recipes on there, well worth checking out, and eventually that will be up on Rumble as well. I just haven't gotten to the point yet where I've had time to, or at least where I've taken the time to get all of those videos downloaded and then uploaded, or downloaded from YouTube to upload to Rumble. So it's a process of a lot of things that need to get done, and just not a ton of time to do it. So it is what it is. But that is everything. Oh yes, I guess also if you want to contact us, you can either comment on the video version of the podcast, or you can send us an email to the orangeboxpodcast@gmail.com, or write us on X at the orangeboxpod. And even though I don't do anything on there, I haven't posted any of the podcast episodes there in probably 6 months at this point. Still, if you send us anything, I should be able to receive it and get back to you, or read your comments or questions or what have you on the podcast. So that should be everything now. Last chance. Any final thoughts?
No, sir.
All right. Well, I am the Frozen Gamer 87. That is I am Zeracon. We are the Orange Box Podcast. And until next time, join me in my ExpADDICTION 33. Orange Box Podcast out.